This is a demo video for Visier's Power BI custom connector. So to get started, you can go to Visier's developer docs, and there will be a page titled Use Visier Data in Power BI. If you scroll to near the bottom of this page, you can find that there's the downloadable MES file. And this MES file is basically the connector file that you need to place in this directory, documents/Power BI desktop/custom connectors. And there are some other setup instructions that can all be found on this user guide page. So for this demo, we'll focus on showing the connector. When we open Power BI desktop, there will be a get data option. And if we click this, we'll see that there's a list of data sources. And if we search Visier, we can find the 1.1.0 version, which is what we'll use for this demo. So here you have to enter your user credentials. For the tenant vanity name, it's usually on the link of your Visier login page. So for this, for example, it will be D3M in the link here. And this is our Visier internal test tenant. And then if we go back here, we can enter the vanity name. And then this initial part is just for testing. So you don't actually have to enter this part for your tenant's vanity name. And then for the API key, we have a random API key that we can use that's generated. And then we click OK. And then we'll be able to get in and see the list of analytic objects. So as an example, we open employee, and then we can see there's several ways you could query data. So first of all, this is a list of single metric queries. So for example, we can search headcount and click on this. It will open the editor on the right-hand side. And so let's try doing 6 months of data, and then the date starting from January 2023. And then we can see the time direction is backward by default. So then it'll query 6 months backward from January 2023. And then these other parameters, we don't really have to enter anything. Because we want 6 months already. And if we go down to the bottom, there's a filter and a group by. And the filter, we can select something like US only. And then for the group by, we can group by gender, for example. And then we can select something like organization hierarchy. And then if we click apply, we'll see a preview of the data we want to query. So as you can see, the headcount number, and then the date, and then the gender and organization hierarchy type. And then we have to tick this to kind of say that we want to load this one as part of our data. And then, so let's go back a little bit and then show the other one. So this is a multi-metric query. So what's the difference is that here we see that in the metrics, we can find headcount, but we can then proceed to choose other ones as well to query at the same time. So let's say we want to query actual total cost of workforce. So we select those two, and now we can query for both of them with the same time options and filter and group bys. And then let's say for this one, we want to do 5 time periods, and then in some months, let's say we want to do a year. And for filter, let's say we want to filter for women, and then group by gender, and location. And then we can click apply again. And then we'll get both of the metric that we query for, as well as the dimensions. And then we can tick this one as well to be loaded later. And then finally, we have a different kind of query, a list query. So for this one, we can select from the employee's properties. So let's say we want to do age, and then we want to do employee ID, and then maybe ethnicity, full name, and gender, and organization. And then we can choose to sort by something. So it has to be one of the properties we selected. So we can sort by, for example, full name, and then choosing the sort order, but the default is ascending, which is fine. And then we can choose January 2023 again, and query. For list query, it doesn't matter as much because for the time period, because it shows you the last known state. So then we can just select the default of 1, and then if we click apply, we'll get the list of records. And as you can see, it's sorted by full name. And we may want the full name to be the first column here if we want to identify it easier, but we can actually do that in a bit. So then let's first load the 3 queries that we applied, and then we can click. So the difference here, if we click load, it will take us directly to the chart generation page. But if we want to first transform our data, we can click transform data. And then this will take us to this Power Query Editor interface. So here we can kind of apply some transformations we want before we actually try to render the charts. So for example, we can rename this column. Like if we don't want the ID to be appended to this, then we can just remove that. And then, or we can say like first and last name for this column. And as you can see, this adds another applied step to it. And then for something else we can do, let's go do headcount query. And the date is all returned with the exact timestamp. But if we don't really need that, then we can just go to transform. And then if we click date, then this is like applying another step. And then we can see now we don't have to deal with the timestamps anymore. So there's just a lot of transformations you can do on this page. But for now, we'll be okay with this. And then to actually apply these, we have to go to home and then click close and apply. And then after we get the data, you can see that on the right-hand side, we have the 3 queries that we made. And if you click open each one, you'll be able to see the different columns we have for the tables. So let's try to make a chart. And then, so let's say for headcount, we want to do a line chart. And then for a line chart, we want the date on the x-axis, and then we want a headcount for the y-axis. And then if we don't want to do it by year, then we can kind of customize this a little bit. This will allow us to do it by month. If we remove it from here, remove the year from here, and then we could organization hierarchy as well, so we can actually add it here and then add it as part of the legend. Then for the line chart, you can see that now it will have a line for each organization hierarchy type, and the headcount, the changing headcount over time. And then let's try another one. So let's say for the list query, we can actually do a simple table. And then if we select all the properties, and actually if you want to sort by first and last name, then you can click this one first, and then this will become the identifier column. And then you can do employee ID, and then you can do all the rest. So the table column order is based on what you select here, and then you can kind of create your own calculations and transformations with the list data. Whereas compared to the list data, the metric data is more complete, so we could just create a line chart directly from the headcount that we got. So that's kind of how you make the charts and how you query data. And the next part is to showcase a sample report that we made, which can be a good starting point for users to get familiar. So let's open this sample report. And then as you can see here, we have some charts that we made, which showcases like what kind of charts you can generate from the data. So all the data here is queried directly by the editor that we've just shown. And then on the bottom, you can take a look at different charts. So these are employee exit charts. And then here, like on the left side, we kind of specify what metrics and analytic object and dimensions that you'll need, because if you don't have all of them, then some of the charts may not generate, and I'll show what that kind of means in a bit. And then here we have requisition, and the last page we have a higher events table. So this is using the list query instead of the metric query, whereas all these charts are using metrics. And then all the data here comes from our internal test tenant, so it's all fake data. But you could actually quickly transform these charts into using your own data. So how do we do that? We should click transform data on the top here. And then here you can see we have a list of parameters. And then if you hover over here, it says enter your credentials with your tenant here. So then we can kind of do this by clicking this manage parameters and then edit parameters. So for our testing purposes, we have another tenant called with value name B7S. And then the API key is the same because that's how we set it up. And then the date here is actually blank because the functionality is kind of that. If you leave the date blank, then we will fetch data from the latest data will date and backward because the default direction is backward. So we change this to B7S and then click OK. And then sometimes you have to go to data source settings and then edit the permissions. And this is basically to re-authenticate because sometimes the PowerBI internal implementation doesn't let you re-authenticate on time. So let's re-authenticate here with a test user for our tenant. And then we sign in here. And then basically we just have to close and apply. And then it will, now it kind of queries all the tables again, but using the new tenant that we entered instead. And then we log in already, we just log in, so then we're already authenticated. And then as you can see, the data now kind of changes because now it's based on the tenant that we just logged in as. So basically this sample report is flexible in the sense that you just have to go and enter your credentials and log in, and then it will query for the from the appropriate from the tenant that you entered. And then you can see access charts change as well, and there's a drill through that we can do for this chart. So if we drill down, then we can drill into the months, and then if we drill down again, we can drill. We can see the different organizations' percentages for this. So just some different functionality charts you can have. And then if we go to requisition charts, we'll see that there's it says something's wrong with one or more fields, and so if you click on one of them, you can see on the right here that this field can be used, this field can be used. And basically this means that we haven't got the data for them in the tenant, because if you look at the table here, we no longer have the columns for the requisition metrics here. So then basically that means if you don't have the data for these metrics or dimensions, then you won't be able to see those charts in our sample report. And then for the higher events, it's also shifted to use the new tenant's data. And so the other thing you could do is actually edit the filters and or dimensions on the fly. So essentially, for example, for this employee exit charts, we can go to transform data again. And then we click this one. So this corresponds to that page of charts. And then on the right here, there's a series of cogwheels we could do. And this one is the most important one, the last one, because then when you click this one, you're able to change and edit like the parameters for the query. And this is very similar to what we've shown around the beginning of this demo, where we could choose like the metrics and the time options and the filter group bys. So we see that right now we're grouping by job name and we don't have any filters. So let's say we want to apply some filter. We can apply let's say US only filter again. And then we click OK. And then we can just click close and apply. And then basically what that means is we added a filter to the query. And so we don't have to create a new query. We can just edit the filters on the current one. And then you see the chart data kind of changes slightly because we added a filter. So naturally, that means you would have less numbers for the data. And so that's how you can kind of modify the charts on the fly. So a good workflow is kind of making the multi-metric query, and then essentially we can use these metrics to generate different charts. So this way it's more convenient because then if we want to edit the data filters and time options, then we can just do it for all of them instead of having to change each one individually. Because for the headcount charts here, they're by contrast, they're like using like one table here for each chart, which means like if you want to edit the dates, you have to edit for each query. So that's why the multi-metric could be more useful. And that's about it for what you can do with this sample report. And thank you for watching this demo.